Welcome in, friends. Dan and Tim back with the Banners Fly Forever football podcast, bringing you back for our post Super Wildcard Weekend reactions. We had 3 straight days of double headers thanks to a little snow in Buffalo, and I think the NFL got some ideas this weekend about Martin Luther King Day being the new
Yeah,
national football holiday. So
absolutely.
before we get into it, Tim, how you been? How was your weekend? And what
It was it
think
was good. In the Chicago area, we had tons of snow, and it was like -12 out this morning. So it's been freezing here. So I just kind of, you know, boarded up the house and watched football all weekend. It wasn't too bad at all. Super wild card weekend. Kind of didn't live up to the super name. In that we had 5 pretty much blowout games overall. The Lions and Rams was really the only game that was like, oh, this is pretty exciting coming down to the end. Everything else was like pretty quick. You were like, oh, this is kind of over already, isn't it? Kyle Shanahan today, I think, was in his press conference. They were saying, so when did you start looking at Green Bay? And he said like during the second quarter. So that's kind of how the games went.
I saw that's kind of embarrassing for Dallas fans.
Absolutely, yeah. But I mean, we can start right off from wild card weekend, and we'll get this one out of the way real quick, Dan. And the first game was that Texans Browns game, and look, let's not go into the negative. Let's not, it was tough. I get it. As a Browns fan, it was not probably fun, but CJ Stroud, man. If you didn't believe it during the season, how could you not believe it now? Like, this kid is really something, and to do it this quickly is amazing.
So I was actually on a show last week, like a preview show with a Texans fan, and man, I said CJ's the new bad man. He's the new bad man that you don't want to see on the other side of the field, and it's crazy that he's doing it at such a young age.
Absolutely.
Also, big credit to their offensive coordinator, Bobby Slowick. His game plan was like exactly what the Browns didn't need to see. It was all quick passing. Miles, maybe his worst game in his career. I don't want to say it's not his fault, because you're a superstar, you're supposed to overcome these things.
Of course, yeah.
But the passing game really took away that aggressive, pass rush that the Browns were known for all year. And then, Greg Newsome picked the best day of the year to have his worst game ever. So just
secondary was rough, man. It was tough.
And the thing with Flacco is, he has those turnovers every game.
Sure.
And they just happen. So, you're sitting there, you're like, all right, turnovers haven't happened. When are they coming? And then boom, they came. Not only they came back-to-back plays. And then at that point, that was just it. But
well, I mean, Flacco's thing during the year was, I mean, he had turnovers. Like, he, as much as he was moving the ball and they were getting touchdowns and scoring on some drives, it was like, if that wasn't happening, turnovers happened quite a bit. But the Browns defense was so strong during the regular season that they made up for that fact. Like, I mean, I know when the Bears played you guys, because I was watching that game pretty intently. We had like 3 interceptions against Flacco, and we lost the game. I mean, it's the defense was kind of holding it in, and Flacco would get enough points and make enough big plays kind of down the stretch to win games. And this one it got out of hand so quick, and the defense could never stop Houston. I mean, was there any point that they really shut them down at all? Because it sure didn't feel like it. Not until maybe Stroud was taken out,
Yeah. At that point, obviously, it was so over. But not only but the few plays where we did stop them, it'd be like a missed tackle here or a missed tackle there, and Brevin Jordan's off for a 76-yard touchdown
on like a screen pass.
Yeah. So exactly. So even like the times where we did, quote unquote, stop them, just little mental lapses, and that's on to next season, as I say, right, Tim?
Absolutely, on to next season. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that is kind of fun now as far as NFL fans is, I mean, we're getting to see another young quarterback in the AFC. As an NFC team fan, I don't mind seeing the best quarterback from this rookie class being in the AFC side again. But Stroud and and company are going to go to Baltimore now, and that should be a pretty interesting matchup. I mean, it's going to be really tough, especially as a young rookie quarterback, but I'm really excited to see how that plays out. I don't expect the Texans to win by any means right now, but like, wouldn't it be something if he went in there and, put up a game? Like,
I mean, did we expect a lot of things that happened this weekend?
Of course.
I was like,
yeah.
We said the game, it didn't live up to the hype with like the games weren't that great, but
right.
I mean, the wild was definitely in the weekend.
Sure.
When it comes from the weather with Buffalo, with having 3 days of games, 3 days of double headers,
and the weather in Kansas City being freezing.
Weather in Kansas City, all the underdogs winning. It was a great weekend of football. I mean,
absolutely. I wasn't trying to take away that it was fun or anything. It was just they were blowouts. That's all.
Yeah. But yeah, Houston, they look really good, and later in this episode we'll get more into how good they look. But you mentioned weather and Kansas City. Let's dive a little bit into that Chiefs-Dolphins game. And
I mean that weather played a factor. Like there's just no denying it. Like Miami is at home in that game. I'm not going to say Miami would have beat Kansas City by any means. Like that's not.
But it'd be a lot closer.
Oh, it would have been so much closer. Like about halfway through the second quarter in that game, it was like, oh, Miami's just not going to score. Like this just isn't going to happen. Like the thing with speed is you can win with it for sure, but when weather games like that come into play, I don't know how you redesign your offense to be effective, because speed guys being neutralized because slippery ground, hard ground, freezing cold weather, you're kind of moving slower, the hits hurt more. That stuff builds up after a few different plays, and very suddenly it's like, how do we move the ball? And pretty quickly it was like, yep, this is going to be a problem. And Kansas City's defense, for as tough as their offense has kind of been trying to find their way this season, Kansas City's defense has been very, very steady, and once again, moved them on another win in Arrowhead for Mahomes and company. So, I mean, what were your takeaways, at least, I guess, from a pretty one-sided game?
Yeah, so it was scores 26-7, which actually wasn't even the biggest blowout this weekend. Yeah. But like, you look at the Dolphins, for example, their passing game. Tyreek had that 53-yard touchdown. Yeah. If you take out that, Tua had only 146 passing yards on 39 attempts. Yeah. So they weren't able to move the ball at all. No. So the score is 26-7. It might as well have been 56-7. Yeah. Because we saw the cold, it affected both teams. People talk about like, oh, the home field advantage of playing in the cold. Like, get out of here. The Chiefs don't. Nobody
wants to play in that cold. No one wants their helmet exploding because it's so cold.
You saw Patrick with his helmet, chipping and exploding. Travis had I think 3 or 4 drops, which is I hate to say it because the 2023 Chiefs, that seems to be their MO, is all the drops. Right. Travis throughout his career has never had a problem with drops, but absolutely that's if you go back and you look at the drops, it was all when he's like trying to squeeze the ball, and when it's that cold, your hands are so numb. The ball is like a rock itself. It's just like like I beg anybody who's living in cold weather right now to go outside and just like try to maneuver your hand around something, like be very articulate with it. Like you're going to lose feeling in the tips of your fingers, so you're not able to actually, get an idea of where your grasp is. And that's just what everyone was going through. To say that it was like, better for Kansas City, they're more used to it. Yes. Sure. Andy Reid is more used to calling plays in that type of weather, but it affects both teams equally.
Of course. I think it's just a difference of what your team design and build is, where Miami bases their team a lot on speed and being to outrun the other team and outmaneuver the other team, where when you start getting into these cold weather games, kind of being hard-nosed and taking the hits and filling the gaps and the holes comes big into play. And we
having a running back like Isaiah Pacheco,
absolutely,
thrived in this game. Absolutely. I mean, he's just out there. He's just trying to look to hit people. And this is the type of game where you needed a player, like Isaiah Pacheco. Yes, running backs don't matter and this and that, but like I feel like he was such a key contributor to what they did.
And Miami did have a ton of injuries. Like they've been pretty riddled with injuries down the stretch here, so that does play a factor too. It's not an excuse or anything for that's the only reason they lost, but it all plays a factor into kind of that game. Even though the final score didn't even look crazy as a 19-point loss, that thing was never a game. So yeah. But then Sunday, we finally got to get to a good game in the later set. But we had early Sunday was the Dallas and Green Bay game, which if you would have told me was going to be a blowout, I would not have expected which team blew out the other team. 7.5-point underdog Packers go in and just dominate the Cowboys. I know all the talk kind of since the game has been with Dak and Mike McCarthy, are they going to move on from him? But I mean, the thing that really surprised me in this game was Dallas's defense. I could not believe how easily the Packers are moving the ball down the field. And that's not to take away from their skill set or the great game plan and play calling by Matt LaFleur in the game. But I mean, they were just moving the ball at will. They punted twice in the game, and one of them was when they were trying to run out the clock at the end of the game. So they really only got forced to punt once in the entire game. And this is a Dallas team that had won 16 games in a row at home and was just demolishing teams at home. And Green Bay went in, the youngest team in the NFL, and they just kicked them in the mouth.
Dallas at home has been a boat all season.
Yeah,
all season long, just putting up bonko points. The defense looks unstoppable, but you're not going to like this. But I actually was at the bar watching that game with a friend, and just watching Jordan Love operate the offense and operating in the pocket. And there's this one play where he just sort of like was falling back and like flicked the ball out like just so perfectly at the right time. And I said, "That's Aaron Rodgers' move."
Yeah, it
is.
He
learned that one from Aaron. They got another one, Tim. I'm sorry.
I mean, any of my Bears fan friends and my dad, all of us, we've kind of just watched throughout the year as Jordan Love's doing it, and I mean, it's just all you can do is shake your head and just they did it again. That's what it feels like. I mean, I can't believe that he has looked as good as he has. I thought even if he was going to be a good starting quarterback, that it was going to take a little time, kind of taking over Aaron Rodgers, all the pressure. He doesn't have a lot of really mature veteran weapons on his. He's got like 3 rookie wide receivers and 2 second-year wide receivers.
Let's be honest, like Bo Melton played a very significant portion of snaps, and I loved Bo Melton coming out of Rutgers because he's a Jersey kid, but he's been buried on the Seahawks practice squad for the past, year and a half. And they're getting production out of him.
Bo Melton, Dontavian Wicks, you got Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft both playing a part, and then I mean, Jaden Reed, who we both kind of loved in the draft process last year, he's been awesome for the Packers. And I don't know, man. We can look at it on the one side and just go, man, like the Packers are kind of coming into, a great time to refresh that team and still be talented. And then you can look at it on the other side, which we're going to get into in a little bit, and just what happened to the Cowboys, So kind of all of that is all entailed in that game. And we'll dig into it a little bit more with Dallas in a little bit here. But if there was going to be one home team that lost this weekend, only one, I would never have guessed it was going to be Dallas.
No. And now, I mean, we'll continue this conversation with the Cowboys a little bit later, but Mike McCarthy, his biggest knock has always been, is end of game clock management.
Sure.
And I also said to my buddy, I'm like, hey, McCarthy, we don't have to worry about the end of game clock management coming out to bite them because they weren't even close. Like, I know the final score was 48-32, but we got to remember, like, Green Bay up at half was up 27-7.
Yeah.
And I think even one point past that, they were up like 34-10 or something. So,
I mean, another game where they pulled the starter. So,
yeah, Dallas putting points up at the end of the game, but, exact definition of garbage time. But what was zero garbage time was that Sunday night football matchup.
Yes, sir.
The Lions and the Rams, and that was probably the best game of the weekend. I mean,
it
was the closest game of the weekend. I would say the storylines surrounding that game were probably the best of the weekend. You got literally like A/B analysis of a trade that occurred 2 years ago and seeing that play out in the field. Like, Tim, we do a lot of draft coverage. We talk about team building and stuff like that. But like, when do we ever get to see like a direct comparison of how those trades play out better
Yeah,
than
almost never.
better than we did on Sunday night.
Yeah. I mean, it was what was awesome about it was you didn't have either team disappoint. Like as much as the Rams got knocked out and everything, Matt Stafford looked awesome. Like Matt Stafford was changing the arm angles, no look passing, keeping the Rams in it. When they got the ball back, with 7 minutes left and they were down 1, I was like, they're for sure going to drive down and score here. And the Lions are going to have like 4 minutes, 3 minutes or whatever to try to have, the drive to give themselves another playoff game and get the first win in 30 years or whatever. It was just such a back and forth game for so long. And I couldn't have been more entertained. One name I have to mention in here, and especially, we are fantasy guys too, is, has Puka Nacua like completely just made Cooper Kupp irrelevant on that team? Because man, oh man, was he everywhere on the field. And he does one of the only things that Kupp can't do is the yak. Guy was breaking tackles and getting an extra 20 or 30 yards on plays. I think he set a rookie record of receiving yards in your first playoff game with 181 receiving yards. He was just absolutely dominant, and he did it in every fashion.
I'm pretty sure he was approaching like Rams playoff records.
Yeah.
And we got to remember, like, the greatest show on turf, like back in like 2000, like
Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt.
Yeah, like it's not like a franchise that doesn't have like Amari
the Bears.
Yeah, I was gonna say the Amari broke the Browns record this year, which was what, Josh Gordon.
Yeah,
exactly. That's about it.
Yeah,
so, like the Rams have had great wide receivers play for them.
Absolutely.
And then for him to in his first year, his first playoff appearance, to put this up,
just awesome.
I kick myself every day because I was there. I saw him at the Senior Bowl, and I just wrote it off as I was playing with Jaron Hall, his college quarterback. That's why he looks so good. And
yeah. No, man,
learned.
I traded him in my main fantasy league for a first and a second round pick like 3 weeks into the year, and I was like, "That's awesome." I just took an undrafted guy and got a first and second round pick for him, and I'm like, "Man, that was a terrible deal." Actually, like it looks really bad now. I think you could very easily argue him as a top 5 fantasy receiver, but I don't know. It just, you watch that game and the Rams are kind of an interesting team now because with Kyron Williams kind of developing and Puka Nacua being there, Kupp is still there. If they can make a couple different moves defensively in the offseason, I think they're still a team to worry about in the NFC. This is a good Lions team that beat them at home. The Rams were away and they almost stole it from them. So, great game, great by the Rams. But hey, I'm a Bears fan, and I'm very, very willing to say, congratulations, Detroit fans and Lions fans. It has been a long time, a lot to endure for a long time, and good for you guys to have that game and to get another home game coming up this weekend. And I hope it's just, the best time. I can't imagine all the Michigan football, Detroit Lion football fans that are out there are having a bad week. But congratulations to all you guys.
Quite a year. And you know what? Rams fans can't be so disappointed either, because I was sitting there watching the game, and the NBC crew, they do the starting lineup with the players introducing themselves.
Yeah.
And you watch the Rams starters go through, and you're just like, like how many rookies they had starting in a playoff game. Stafford, he got banged up in this game again. He's been banged up through this year. He missed a lot of time last year. So the questions do come into play is how much time does Matthew Stafford have left? But I hate to say it, this roster is really, really solid outside of that quarterback position, to the point where, you grab a plug and play journeyman like a Kirk Cousins or somebody, like they are still right back into the playoffs. So,
absolutely,
we'll get into this quarterback draft class and whether any of these players are an option for the Rams, which with where they are picking.
Yeah.
But, McVay and Les Snead and like the whole guys putting the roster together there, they've knocked out of the park so far. They've done a really, really good job after supposedly going all in for that Super Bowl to, just 2 years later to be back in the playoffs. It's an amazing roster construction strategy by Los Angeles.
Yeah. So then Monday we had the game that moved from Sunday to Monday. The snow apocalypse moved it into Monday. The Bills beat the Steelers in a game that got a lot closer than I think anybody thought it was going to be when it was 21-0 kind of earlier in the game. But when push came to shove, Josh Allen and that Bills offense was almost unstoppable in the game for that Steelers defense, especially without having TJ Watt there. You got the second longest touchdown run by a quarterback in playoff history for Josh Allen was like a 54-yard run. And ultimately this game kind of left me going like, yeah, this is what I expected. But I am thinking the Bills maybe need to be a little concerned about their defense going into a game against Patrick Mahomes, because it looked a lot more susceptible than I thought it was going to look against Mason Rudolph. And I know Rasul Douglas was out with an injury, and they have some injuries going on, so maybe they'll get healthy during the week here. But Buffalo, for round 3 in the playoffs against Kansas City, finally gets one in Buffalo. So we'll see if the third time's the charm for Josh Allen and company to finally beat Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. But overall, Buffalo looked the part of, the team that had kind of come down the stretch and played to win every game, basically, to get into the playoffs. And I think they're going to be a tough out for Mahomes and company, but it is going to be this is probably the game I think I'm most excited for going into the divisional round this weekend.
I think the biggest thing for Buffalo is they got a clean sheet out of Josh Allen.
That's true.
No turnovers. Not to say that, there weren't a couple of close calls or anything, but
still Josh Allen.
No turnovers, which is huge. It's the positive version of the Josh Allen experience. And I hate to say, I think the only way Kansas City goes into Buffalo and pulls out a win is if they get a little bit more of that bad Josh Allen experience. If Josh can put up another clean sheet against this Chiefs defense, I don't really see a way they lose at home right now, especially with the way Kansas City's offense is moving the ball. We talk about problems with drops being, weather related the last game, but they're also a problem all season long for the Chiefs, regardless of where they're playing. So, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, it's the new Brady, Peyton Manning, Brady Breeze, name your classic LA Montana, name your classic, quarterback matchup. And this is the new version of it. So we're just blessed to get another one this year.
Yeah. I mean, the last 3 or 4 years, it's kind of been, 3 quarterbacks in these two, which is, Mahomes and Allen, and then Burrow kind of was in there as well. So they've all kind of played each other, knocked each other out of the playoffs. Well, the Bills haven't knocked the Chiefs out, but everybody else kind of knocked each other out of the playoffs. But you bring up a good point. If Allen keeps a clean sheet, that it's going to be hard for the Chiefs to go into Buffalo and win. But we have to remember too that we're about a half yard of Kadarius Toney lining up off sides from the Chiefs beating the Bills earlier this year. So as much struggles as the Chiefs have had, I know that was in Arrowhead, but the Chiefs very easily could have beat the Bills earlier this year. So it's looked tough for the Chiefs, but it's still Mahomes. It's still Travis Kelce. And I don't know. I think there was enough showing by the Bills, being susceptible to a few things that I wasn't expecting, that I think there is more gap here than I thought there was originally. I kind of thought the Bills would take care of business if they got to meet up with them. But one of the things was Jalen Warren in this game with the Steelers was actually kind of running all over the Bills for several portions of the game. And if that's Isaiah Pacheco on Sunday, I think it's a Sunday game on Sunday, then
it has to be Sunday because they played on Monday.
On Monday, yes. And if that's Isaiah Pacheco on Sunday, that could be a big problem for the Bills. I think the Chiefs will need to try to control the clock and keep the ball out of Josh Allen's hands, but we will see for sure.
Yeah, and so that brings us to our final game of the Super Wildcard Weekend. And Browns, we started the weekend down bad, and we sure finished the weekend down bad, because by God, Baker Mayfield leads the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to an upset playoff victory over the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't think that game was really that close at all.
No, I mean, there was one point when it was like a 7-point game. It was 16-9, and it still didn't feel that close.
Yeah. From the first drive for both sides, I feel like it was so obvious Tampa was able to move the ball, and it was so obvious Philadelphia was struggling to move the ball.
Yeah.
This might have felt like the biggest blowout.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Of the weekend.
Yeah, there was really I think any of the points in the game was just me going okay, well, Philly's going to wake up here. Like that was like kind of just, that was the only thing that was keeping it from just being like, this game's already over, was like, no, this is the Eagles. This is the team that kind of dominated the NFC last year. They're going to wake up here eventually. They're going to show something. And they had the one big play to Devonta Smith to set up their only touchdown. And outside of that, it was just nothing. I mean, missed passes. Jalen Hurts has to be playing hurt. I mean, he has to be hot.
He has been all year.
Yeah.
Like it's just so obvious at this point because the
mobility is just not there.
Shoulder injury, and I'm sure other things along the way.
His knee or something. Yeah. Because his mobility was just not there. Like even last night, like when he did decide to run, he was going down pretty quick. He was just like, all right, I got to get a few yards. It doesn't look right, and it's tough. It's tough for Philly because I mean they were a very good 10-1 to out in the wild card round is wild.
Yeah, and the big talk about Philly this year is the double cheek push, the tush push, the brotherly shove, whatever terminology you want to use. You're taking a quarterback that's injured all the time, and just lining up, 500 pounds of guys behind him and then pushing him, like that can't help.
No, exactly. I mean,
that can't help at all.
Jason Kelsey, who said he was retiring today, there was a quote from one of the reporters that said every time that they called that play, he just said, fuck my life. Like, I mean, that's taking a beating on every offensive lineman, and it's taking a beating on your quarterback. And for as successful as the play is, it's like, hey, maybe in week 7, you don't need to call it 3 times in the game because you're not worried about week 7. You're worried about, wild card weekend in the divisional round.
Yeah. Like what cost does that play, actually incur?
Exactly.
And for a coach like Sirianni, who now is like a hot topic of being in the hot seat with his, coordinator maneuvers, how do you not just like bring in another quarterback or another position skill player to like, to do that? Like they obviously practice it enough. They have a rugby consultant on staff to help them with that formation.
Right.
Like how do you just not have a 3rd, 4th string tight end that you can substitute in? Like, because they're not disguising it.
Yeah.
Everyone knows it's coming. So it doesn't matter if it's Jalen Hurts back there or some other player that's back there. They know it's coming.
Right.
And it's down to an execution thing. So it's
absolutely
an unneeded wear and tear on your quarterback's body.
For sure.
Your quarterback that you just signed to a big extension.
Huge extension.
Yeah, so it's not a good look.
And we're going to dig into Philly in just a second, but before we get off this game, great work by Tampa.
I was trying to avoid talking about Baker Mayfield.
You can completely avoid it. The defense played lights out. I mean, I can't tell you, like watching that game felt like we were watching the Bucs from 3 years ago winning that Super Bowl. Like that defense was everywhere. They were making plays all over the field, and they really only gave up a couple of big plays. And outside of that, it was just lights out. Philly was never in the game, and this is a good Philly team, whether they're injured or not playing at their top of their ability or not. Like these are star players, and Tampa looked really, really good. And I think everyone's going to be betting on the Lions this weekend, with Tampa coming to town. But I would not be stunned if Tampa went in there and surprised them. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I wouldn't be betting on it, but Tampa is a lot better than we were giving them credit for. And for, the NFC South getting mocked all year, well, maybe it's the NFC least that we needed to be talking about because there's no one left in the NFC East. We had 2 pretty pitiful teams in the Giants and Commanders, and probably the 2 biggest disappointments of the weekend were the Eagles and the Cowboys. So that kind of brings us to our next topic here, the future for both franchises. You just mentioned, Nick Sirianni's kind of maybe on the hot seat now. I don't think they're going to actually do anything right away right now, but it wouldn't be unheard of in that organization. Doug Peterson didn't last too long after winning a Super Bowl in Philly. We've seen coaches like, John Fox took the Broncos to a Super Bowl and then was out after the following season. So, I mean, it's not crazy and not unheard of that could happen. I don't think it happens, but kind of, I mean, we could start there as Sirianni and Mike McCarthy. Do you see either of these guys, I guess not coaching or coaching these teams next year?
So I think the thing Sirianni has going for him right now is Jonathan Gannon and Shane Steichen, the coordinators from their Super Bowl run last year, left in the offseason and are head coaching with different teams. So I think Brian Johnson and is Matt Patricia the actual defensive coordinator right
So
now, or is
it's
he just
Sean Desai, but
he's a play caller, right?
yeah, but he's calling the plays. It's goofy there.
So I think all three of those guys are going to bite the bullet
Yeah.
for Sirianni, and I think Howie Roseman and Sirianni are going to work together to bring in another pair of coordinators.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that the feels in that building are going to be like Howie kind of has the call on the coordinators, and Sirianni are just there to listen in. Like they're not going to let Sirianni pick these next coordinators.
No way.
That's Hugh Laurie. Like you think about the Eagles their past 10 years. Roseman was there for the initial Super Bowl run, the tear down, and now the next Super Bowl run. Like
right.
Howie's not leaving. Hugh Laurie's going to stick with Howie Roseman. So.
Yes.
I feel like both coordinators and Patricia will be out the door. I feel like Howie Roseman will be in charge of hiring the new coordinators. And then, at that point, Sirianni's kind of like under the gun, like, okay, we need results in 2024.
Yeah.
We need you to get back to that next level. So I don't think Sirianni's gone, but I think it's close. It's definitely close.
Yeah, I think it's a lot hotter seat than anybody would have expected, especially when they were 10-1. I guess you definitely make a good point with Steichen and Gannon having moved on. That you can't blame them for having a rough year after losing both of your coordinators. But then the opposite is true of begging the question of, was it just the coordinators that got you there? So I mean that's kind of the hardest part, and I don't think they're gonna be able to fire him right now off of that one season. It is just interesting though because of some of the candidates that are out there. I mean, there are names out there this year that 3 or 4 years ago you would have thought would never have been available at all as head coaches. So I think Sirianni sticks around, but if the Eagles struggle next year, especially if they don't make the playoffs, but if they have another early exit, then I think, you're probably looking at moving on from him, even though he was coaching in the Super Bowl 2 years before that. On the opposite end, Mike McCarthy, he can't get it done. I mean, I just don't know what to say anymore. And even Jerry Jones after the game, he's like, this one was, I can't remember the exact quote he had, but basically saying this was the worst one, or, the most thought of one that they could have had, a loss that they could have had. Even he, might be seeing that light now that McCarthy just can't get it done. Whether that's, Dak, struggling in the playoffs or the offense struggling or whatever it is, Mike McCarthy hasn't been able to take Dallas where they are supposed to be going. They're supposed to finally break that getting to the NFC Championship game, 25-year drought or whatever, and they just have not done it. I think I saw the stat for their franchise that in the first 30 years of the Super Bowl, they were in the final four, the playing to get to the Super Bowl in 16 of those 30 years. This was a franchise that was constantly playing for the right to go to the Super Bowl, and they have not been in that position now in 28 years. That's a long time. And Jerry Jones, I think, with what I just said there, with how many coaching prospects are out there that are big names and really good coaches, I think they're going to make the move this year. I really do.
And I always say McCarthy, I always bring this story back up because it really sticks with me about, I don't want to say the type of person he is because I don't know him personally, but the type of professional he is. You remember he left Green Bay and he took that year off, and he was, studying analytics and improving his resume and getting more in touch with the modern NFL.
Sure.
And then he lands the Cowboys job, and then, comes out like, oh, I actually kind of made that up. I wasn't really studying analytics at all.
Right.
One, how do you leak that story?
Yeah.
That would go to my grave with me.
Yep.
I'm not leaking that to anybody.
No.
But two, how, I don't know, what did you do for that year? You talked about it, so it was obviously on your mind that it's something that you should do.
Yeah.
Yet you didn't do it. So
it's he sat there and was like, I know more than these people, that I don't have to do this, but I have to say I'm doing this in order to get back into it. I got to make up that I'm doing it so that I'm back involved, but I ain't doing that.
So, like I said, I don't know these guys personally or in a professional setting, but if I'm Jerry Jones and I'm running this brand, because let's be honest, the Cowboys are a brand to
Right.
him. Um, that's not a good look.
No,
That's damage to my brand's reputation,
absolutely.
and which just I think makes it easier to let go of somebody like that.
Right. But I mean, when you look at the teams that are left right now, the teams that are still in the playoffs, right? You have Sean McDermott with Buffalo, you have Andy Reid with Kansas City, you have John Harbaugh with Baltimore. You have Matt LaFleur and Kyle Shanahan with the Packers and the 49ers. And I look at it and I'm like, look at like the hires that have been in that same period with Mike McCarthy. Like I look at D'Amico Ryans, first year head coach, who is getting the most out of his team. Like he is getting the most out of his players. Dan Campbell, who's is his third year or fourth year in Detroit now, and he's getting the best that has ever happened out of Detroit. There are guys out there that are getting the players to buy in and the best product on the field for what the talent is there. And I just don't know if you can say Mike McCarthy's doing that. Like you can't watch this team in the regular season and then put up tons of points against teams or completely demolish teams or stop them and then go like, he just can't get it done in the playoffs. Like for as great as it is to get to the postseason as the 2 seed, it doesn't matter if you're not playing in the second weekend. So eventually you got to kind of see the writing on the wall and go, I got all these contracts for all these players. I got big name players on my team. I got CeeDee Lamb, one of the best receivers in the NFL. I have Dak Prescott, who was playing almost MVP level quarterbacking in the regular season. I have Micah Parsons, who's arguably the best defensive player in the NFL. TJ Watt, with them as well. How are you not getting to the second round? Like, how are you not doing that?
And you mentioned Parsons. We also have to remember, like Parsons still has to get paid.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely.
I was looking at the numbers, and the Dallas Cowboys are currently $11 million over the cap next year.
Cheapers.
Yeah. So like
and his contract's coming up because he was in the Fields class. So he's going into year 4 next year.
Yes, yeah. So he's eligible for a contract extension.
Right.
The CD deal was done, the Trayvon Diggs deal was done, but you're just getting more up and up against the cap. And look real fast. Yeah, Dak Prescott is actually entering a contract year in 2024.
Right.
He has a couple of void years in 25, 26. So like,
yep,
this isn't getting easier. You have a bunch of players that are good, but they're also getting expensive. And,
absolutely. I mean, Deron Bland had 9 interceptions in the regular season this year, right? Like, I mean,
6 returned for a touchdown.
Exactly. So, like, he's going to cost more. I mean, like, every player that's playing really well in the regular season, it's like, that's awesome. That's great. That gets me into the playoffs and gives me a high seed. But if you're going to lose right away, then all you're getting is expensive players that are just getting you a high seed before you get knocked out. Like, you have to get it done when that starts happening. And McCarthy's had several chances. He's just not doing it.
And this isn't even just a McCarthy Cowboys problem.
Sure.
Let's say it. How many Super Bowls would Aaron Rodgers have if Mike McCarthy wasn't his head coach all those years?
Probably more than 1.
I would say at least 2.
Yeah. He probably would have played in 2. Like, I mean, he played in 1 Super Bowl. Like, I know he won the one he went to, but he only got to 1 Super Bowl. Like that is crazy. And like, we can watch Jordan Love playing really well for the Packers now and go just like, oh, maybe they're just a great franchise and it's a good system. Like, no, Aaron Rodgers is one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the position. To only get to 1 Super Bowl with all those years of McCarthy is a crime. Exactly. It's crazy. And so he did it in Green Bay. Everyone's been talking about it, how he can't get it done there. But when he came to Dallas, like, oh, Jerry thinks he's going to get what has happened. It's been exactly what every critic was saying when he hired him has happened and played out. So if he returns, I will be really stunned. I can't believe that they wouldn't try to make some sort of play for a Belichick, a Vrabel, see if Mike Tomlin could even be available. It was kind of a weird press conference after that game. There has to be somebody else that has gotten it done before that you could bring in.
Or even, it's a bad look now because the defense played so badly, but Dan Quinn.
Just promote him.
Yeah, just promote him to your head coaching position.
Quinn's a really well-known and well-liked guy in the NFL. Like, you promote him to being head coach, and he can bring in two really good, offensive and defensive coordinators that can maybe get you to that next step.
Yeah, I'm sure Kyle
you
Shanahan
might lose with a 25-point lead in the Super Bowl with him, but he
I'm
can get you
sure.
there at least.
I'm sure Kyle Shanahan has some executive assistant somewhere who hasn't been hired yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, somebody who was originally on that Mike Shanahan Washington Redskins team. That
The 2013 Redskins, they're running like they almost have the entire like coaching staff hired out full
absolutely.
time. They're running
Bobby
out of
Slowick
players.
was on that team as well. Like he's the next one to.
He was a
defensive player.
Yeah,
He was like a defensive line coach.
Inside linebackers coach.
Yeah, exactly. And now he's the offensive coordinator of the Houston Texans. So, I mean, go figure, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah, when I look at these two franchises, I look at two teams that just disappointed unbelievably this year. I know Philly got to the Super Bowl last year. They came up just short. They almost won it. But them going from 10-1 to, a 1-6 finish and getting knocked out by the NFC South winner, not a great look. And they've looked pathetic doing it, especially without having their quarterback go down. I know he might have been injured, but he was still playing. So it's a real bad look. And then the Cowboys just getting demolished by the 7 seed. It's no good. And I think we're going to see changes in some way, shape, or form with both franchises moving forward. But on that bad side, the Cowboys and Eagles, the good side, right? The two teams that I think are kind of the most fun to talk about from Wildcard Weekend, the Lions and the Texans. And before we got on, Dan, you were looking up their cap space going into the 2024 off season, which is not to say neither of these teams might not win the Super Bowl this year, but we are still looking ahead after their playoff runs end. Is this going to be kind of a 1-year thing, or what do they have moving forward? And I think both teams are set up pretty nicely, right?
Yeah, so the Texans currently rank 3rd in available cap space, with almost 75 million left to go into 2024. And the Lions, they rank 7th with 61 million heading into 2024. But the other crazy thing is, like, you look at the Houston Texans, like, okay, 75 million in space, like they got to probably pay some of their guys, but like not really.
Yeah.
Like Dalton, like think about significant snaps. Dalton Schultz, like,
sure.
Yes, he's playing great. You could bring him back, but he's also a 28-year-old tight end,
right.
And you have money to spend. You can probably go out and get someone better.
He's been a product of two good systems. Like,
with the Cowboys exactly. Kaimi, their kicker, but what's a kicker contract? $4 million.
Right.
Jerry Hughes, but he's entering his 36-year-old season, so he's not around too much longer. Sheldon Rankins, the defensive tackle market, like,
right. Is Nico Collins going into year 4?
He's under contract still.
Yeah, I think he might be going into year 4. I mean, he's on that rookie contract, but I think he's going. So this will be his last year on that rookie contract. So that'd be like the first name that I think might have to get paid something.
Yeah,
but it's still a year off. I mean, you might pay him now, but it won't kick in for another year.
And I mean, not to poo-poo on Nico, but it was also only 1 year production.
Absolutely.
So when you
he didn't have over 500 yards the first 2 years.
Yeah. So when you go to the negotiating table as both his agent, I mean, honestly, if they're going to the negotiating table right now, if I was his agent, I would say we are not signing a deal.
Yeah.
Because what the Texans are going to say, like, yes, this was great. Bobby is the offensive coordinator. We got Stroud. Maybe that's why you had so much production.
Right. Exactly.
If I was his agent, I'd be like, we're going back onto the field in 2024 and we're proving we can do it again, because then you're going to get your 20 million a year.
Absolutely. And prove that you're truly the number one, that, when Tank Dell's been out, it's looked even better. But when Tank is back, like, are you truly the number one in this offense? And he's kind of, the wide receiver too. Like, we need you to be the alpha here.
So with $75 million in cap room, they can go out and sign whoever they want at that point.
Absolutely.
Pretty much.
And you have 4 more years. Well, 3 more years till, the 5th year option contract kicks in for Stroud. So cheap rookie deal. And like we said, Will Anderson, Tank Dell, that's 2 more rookies that are 2 of the best players on your team. So you got many years before you have to start paying these guys.
Yeah. And then, you look at like wide receiver, for example, like available free agents, you got your Mike Evans and you got your Odell Beckhams, but you can also start thinking about like tag and trades.
Yeah.
think about like a T. Higgins. Maybe
Exactly.
Cincinnati works out where they don't have the cap room to pay T. Higgins.
Right.
Like, hey, here is, I guess they kept the Browns pick. So
Yes.
that's locked in as pick,
Right.
20 or whatever it's going to
Right.
be.
Right. Yep.
So like you go to Cincinnati, be like, hey, you can't pay T. Here's pick 20. We'll pay T.
Yeah. No.
And
Absolutely.
then you're rolling out Tank Dell, T. Higgins, and Nico Collins next year with
Right.
CJ Stroud. That's
Right.
scary.
Absolutely. No. Yeah.
You look at a team like Philadelphia, or they got Devonta Smith, who's up for a deal soon,
Mm-hmm.
or a team like Denver.
Yes.
Jerry Jeudy, Cortland Sutton, guys that maybe don't fit into the Sean Payton system that they might, take a day 2 pick for.
Right.
So,
well, and we'll see how the rest of the playoffs play out, because there's a couple other teams that are still in the playoffs that I think are getting to that point where they're going to have to start moving. Like, I think the 49ers are a team that are going to have to start really looking into contracts and money, because it's
Brandon
going to
Ayuk's
start
coming up.
Exactly. Brandon Ayuk's coming up. It's going to start tightening up a little bit. Like Deebo Samuel only has one more year left after this year on his contract. And like, there's tons of different guys that are talented players. Like, is Brandon Ayuk a guy they want to give up on now, being younger? Would they want to move Deebo Samuel before, you can't move him anymore? Just there's plenty of names that are out there. And like, that may sound crazy right now as I'm speaking it on, January 16th, but I've seen Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill get traded in the offseason. Like,
we saw AJ Brown get traded on draft night.
On draft night. I would never have thought names like that would have been moved around.
Yeah.
And it happens all the
Diggs,
time. Exactly.
3 years ago, 4 years ago.
DJ Moore got traded as part of, a package of picks and stuff, for the first pick overall. It happens all the time. Houston's going to be in a great position to try to bring in some other weapons for Stroud, but also to even boost up that defense even more, which is young and hungry. And D'Amico Ryans has them playing unbelievably. So, and it's not like that division is some powerhouse division. I mean, the Titans kind of look whatever this year, and they're fired Vrabel.
They're kind of resetting, honestly.
Exactly. The Jaguars, we kind of all thought they were going to run away with that division. It didn't happen at all. Trevor Lawrence still hasn't really become what we thought he would be. I think the biggest threat to them is probably the Colts and Shane Steichen, but that's if, Anthony Richardson stays healthy, which he basically didn't any single game he played this year.
No.
So, yeah, the Texans seem like a team that are here to stay.
And the other thing you got to think about is not only is it having the money, but veterans who are in free agency, they're going to want to go play with a quarterback.
Exactly.
And now you have the quarterback, which unlocks the ability to pay these players to play for your team, which I think is a very underrated aspect of it.
Yeah.
Like, we go back to salary cap, and, the big talk is that Washington has the most salary cap space.
Right.
But like, what veteran free agent is like signing up to go play for the Washington Commanders?
Right.
They're
banking on Drake May or Sam Howell being, amazing. And it's hard to bank on.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's a brand new owner. It's a brand new, we don't even know what the coaching staff looks like. It's, it's a franchise where not even happy with the name. So it's, you need something besides the money to entice your free agents. Like, yes, there'll always be those Jadeveon Clownies that are going to just go out and get paid no matter where.
Right.
And, they're going to be there for the money, like mercenaries.
Right.
But a lot of these guys who are entering the twilight of their career, they're like, I want to win a little bit before I go out. And that's how you get players like that, is by having the quarterback in place, which, Houston just unlocked the cheat code with it.
Absolutely. And even defensive players. Like, you don't think defensive guys don't want to sign on a team that they're like, hey, we're going to be winning a lot of games and I get to play my ball when, I don't have to be stopping a team from, extending a lead or taking the lead, but I'm just kind of teeing off on teams because they are out of their game plan because we're beating them right now. Like,
and then the other thing is you look at D'Amico and the job he's done there. Like, he's young, one,
sure,
but two, like, he played in the league not too long ago for Houston. He is like a real like players coach.
Yeah.
Like, I hate to say it, but like, I feel like the man could still throw on pads and play a little bit of inside linebacker if they really need him to.
Yeah.
So your defensive free agents, they're going to get up for a guy like D'Amico Ryans, and they're going to go out there because they know, like, hey, there's a quarterback like Stroud on the other side of the ball. So I'm not playing, 80 snaps a game, because we're not being blown out.
And the other team that we're discussing here is the same instance. Like, what free agent isn't going out there saying like, I don't want to play for Dan Campbell? Like, you watch this guy coach, you watch the attitude he has and the way he, the way he
The
talks with his
emotions,
players
like,
and the emotion, exactly, the
if
raw
anybody
emotion.
wears their emotions on their sleeve in this league, it's Dan Campbell. That guy can't tell a lie.
Absolutely. Like, it is unbelievable how many, shots we get of him just like passionately screaming, just like crying about football. Like, not even like thinking of a player. He's just like, I just love the sport. Like, he oozes that passion. And like, if you're a player that wants to go and have a great time playing football and play for a competitive and really good team that's young and fun and a city that's like electric right now for football, you're going to Detroit. Like, that seems crazy to be saying on a football podcast. It's like, you know what the destination is? Detroit. But it is. Like, the Lions are a place you want to go to right now. And I mean, hats off to that entire organization for turning this thing around like that. But like you said, they have cap space now. They have this kind of underdog mentality. I mean, like, everything about them is like the underdog, right? Like, not only because of the franchise that hasn't won in forever, but like Jared Goff being your quarterback, the guy who a franchise
castaway almost.
They just gave up on. They're like, here's a throw into this deal so I can get Matt Stafford, is now, leading a team maybe to the NFC Championship game this weekend if they can pull off another home win this weekend. And goodness, dude, like, they have such youth. They're young on the offensive line. They're young in their weapons with Amon-Ra St. Brown and Sam Laporta and Jamison Williams and Jahmyr Gibbs. And they even have, some veteran guys like David Montgomery that are mixed in there, and like Josh Reynolds, and just all the pieces are there for them to be a really talented team. And they still have that cap space. Like, they're going to be doing this for a while. As a Bears fan, I said this before we got on, like, I'm terrified at the fact that like the Lions and Packers look pretty solid and young and are going to be good for a while. Like, what am I going to do in this division?
That's right. Caleb is coming to save the day.
That's it. That's what it is,
But you know what? We'll save the Caleb conversation for another night, because
Absolutely.
I feel like we are going to be going for quite a while on that one.
It's gonna be a long time. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, in kind of closing it out, I mean, I just think these two teams, the Lions, we kind of thought might do this year. We thought they might have that jump. I don't think anyone had the Texans winning a playoff game in 2023-24. Most people thought that when they made that trade on draft night that Arizona was going to have the first and second pick in the draft, because it was, that kind of deal. It is awesome to see that kind of, worst to first flip, and great on them. Is there any team right now that sticks out to you, Dan, as a team that could possibly do either or next year? A team that barely missed the playoffs that you think is going to take the next step next year, or a team that just was kind of miserable this year that you think could make that jump?
I think Denver's that team. I think they were finally correcting some of the wrongs there.
Yeah.
We don't know what's going on with the quarterback situation. It's looking like Russ is out, but I feel very confident that Sean Payton's going to get a player in there that's going to, be good enough to produce in his system right away.
Sure.
The defense, it started out not so great, but it really picked up towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
And yes, AFC, I have to say Denver is probably that team. And then if we're looking at the NFC, like I'm still in on the Falcons, man.
That's exactly the team I was going to say.
Like, yeah. I'm still in on the talent on that roster, and I think if you just get a guy, I mean,
it's the quarterback. I mean, that's what it
also,
is.
I mean, God bless Bill Belichick was interviewing there today.
Yeah, exactly.
I heard.
If they can bring in a quarterback that's got any talent at all, and you let Belichick go down there and coach, like, you would think he's going to be able to unlock something in that team to get them better than, barely missing out on winning the South.
Yeah, because then the other thing is you look at that division.
It's terrible.
Carolina, oof.
Yeah.
New Orleans, they don't want to admit it, but they're on the beginning cycle of a complete reset.
Right.
And then Tampa is looking great right now, but
they're very hot and cold as well.
Very hot and cold.
Yeah.
Very hot.
And they got Mike Evans as a free agent, and they're going to have some turnover there as well, I think. So
yeah.
I like both picks. I think both of those could be, some dark horses. I think Indianapolis could be a dark horse in some manner, just because I love the coach. I think Shane Steichen did a great job there with, Gardner Minshew being that quarterback the whole year. So that's kind of one of those other dark horses that if like Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, that maybe that's kind of a team that you got to worry about come next year. But it will be interesting because this happens every year. Like it's been however many years in a row that like 4 teams that weren't in the playoffs the year before made the playoffs the next year. So
Yep.
Predictions for this weekend. You said you had the Bills over the Chiefs, right?
Yep. Bills over the Chiefs. Lions over. Oh, go AFC first.
Sure.
Yeah. Bills over Chiefs. I mean, I hate to say it, I'm just picking the home teams.
Yeah.
I think the Cinderella stories kind of stopped this weekend.
Sure. I'm gonna say, yeah, I think I'm probably gonna say the same thing. The one that I think I'm the most skeptical about, I said before, is I think the Chiefs are gonna really make it tough on the Bills, but I do think the Lions and the Niners take care of business in at home in their games, which sets up a really fun NFC Championship game, honestly. And yeah, I mean, if the Ravens win, whether it's the Bills or the Chiefs, it's going to be an exciting AFC Championship game as well. So yeah.
For sure. All right, everyone. Well, thank you for joining us tonight. This was great. Tim and I will be back next weekend. We'll break down the games. We'll do some more team building strategy. Probably start doing some draft talk.
Yeah, absolutely.
But you guys have a good night and you enjoy your football this weekend.
Yeah, have a great week.